This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's May 30th, 2025. On this day in 1848, a quintessential summer treat became a realistic option for more people. That's when a Baltimore man named William Young patented the classic hand-cranked ice cream freezer. Previously, the standard method for making ice cream was to have someone with strong arms beat the cream and sugar mixture until their arms gave out, at which point another strong-armed person would have to step in. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. It used to be, until just a few years ago, that this was the time of year when folks all over Nashville pulled out their ice cream makers to perfect their recipe in time for Miss Martha's ice cream cranking. Think of a big old-fashioned summer social under the trees on the massive lawn of First Presbyterian Church over on Franklin Road. It was always in early June. There were kids running around, everyone trying everybody else's ice cream and voting on favorites. And of course, there were prizes. The big winner's recipe was actually produced by Purity Dairies as a limited edition flavor for sale in local grocery stores. Now, that last detail is one big clue that things have changed. Purity is now out of the ice cream making business entirely. There was a crankin' last year, but indoors at Second Presbyterian and in August. But what is very much the same is the reason for the event, to raise money for the Martha O'Brien Center. The organization's roots go back to 1894. That's when Miss Martha herself gathered up a group of volunteers to help meet the physical needs of Nashville's poorest women and children. And man, did she ever make things happen. She started Nashville's first kindergarten. She ran a boarding house for young girls working in the city's factories. She got a clinic up and running and organized classes to teach women marketable skills. That effort was essentially run out of her church, which is now downtown Presbyterian. But in 1948, when the city built a housing project called the Casey Homes, the Martha O'Brien Center relocated to be in the midst of it. And it's still there today. If you listen to the first season of WPLN's podcast, The Promise, that's the neighborhood that Miriam Knight shared. It's still an epicenter of need. And addressing those needs, especially for families and children, remains very much still at the center's mission. When I decided to talk about this today, I had a good idea of what the center does, but I never realized how closely it echoes the original programs. Miss Martha started at kindergarten. The center now operates a K-8 charter school. Her sewing and cooking lessons evolved into today's employment center and career pathways training program. They don't operate a clinic now, but they do a lot of work to link people up with all the kinds of safety net services they might need. Of course, the center is added to its mission in some really important ways, too. For example, they've made a lot of effort to confront the very real challenges that racial disparities layer on for many Nashvillians who need their help. You know, sometimes the news can suck the hope right out of you. I know I feel that, both as a consumer of news and a journalist who shares it. We hear so much about what's going wrong and how many people are in need. But then I remember what Mr. Rogers said his mother told him when he was a boy. When he saw things in the news that scared him, she told him to look for the helpers. You'll always find people helping. The Martha O'Brien Center is one of the helpers. And when you look at how long it's lasted, how much it's grown, it's good to take some comfort there. I think it's helpful sometimes to stop and realize that there are efforts out there that are working in people's lives, to find more hope, but also to find where we can direct our own personal efforts to be a part of the solution, because more people need help. There is tremendous need, and there are organizations, including two, but not limited to the one Miss Martha started, that are already out there doing the work, ready for us to lend a hand. And sometimes, on a really fun day, we can do that by cranking ice cream. In just a few minutes, how immigration policy is creating a divide between some pastors and their congregations. That's coming up after the newscast.
Thematic Static on WNXP is the mixtape we make together, a themed set loosely organized by you, the listener, handpicking songs according to a theme. Airing first Thursdays at 9 a.m. and again Saturdays at 9 a.m., Thematic Static plucks your requests from the socials at WNXP Nashville and by voice memo at 615-320-9100. Thematic Static, the mixtape we make together, supported by United Record Pressing, only on WNXP.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. The U.S. Senate is considering a budget bill that would, among other things, slash funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's also known as SNAP, or food stamps. WPLN's health reporter Catherine Sweeney tells us the program covers food for 1 in 10 Tennesseans.
Under current law, the federal government foots the bill for SNAP benefits. In Tennessee, that's about $142 million a month. If the Republican funding package goes forward, the federal government would cut that by up to 25%, leaving the rest to states. And most, like Tennessee, couldn't afford it. That would mean states would have to give families less money or make the program eligibility more strenuous. The Urban Institute looked into one less money option, dropping the maximum benefit to $2.25 per person per meal. Most families in the U.S. get less than the maximum. The Institute calculated the average cost of a modest, homemade meal across the country. In Tennessee, that number was about $3.60 per person per meal. And it's more expensive in some areas. In Williamson County, a modest meal runs more than $4.
He ended up describing to me
WPLN News.
Tennessee is already in a federal class action lawsuit about its SNAP program. It claims that mismanagement is so bad the state is violating federal law. The court just appointed a former U.S. attorney to oversee the case and act as an investigator, a common practice in complex lawsuits like this. The Trump administration's border czar, Tom Homan, says he plans to visit Nashville in the near future after Mayor Freddie O'Connell criticized a series of ICE sweeps earlier this month. O'Connell helped publicize the Belonging Fund, a community fundraising initiative to assist the families of those detained. No city money has gone to the fund, but Homan tells Fox News that the Homeland Security Committee is opening a congressional investigation into O'Connell's response to the raids.
I have my own belonging fund. We can give housing, food, and free medical care in ICE detention, and that's exactly what we're going to do in Nashville. We're going to flood the zone with agents, multi-agency, FBI, DEA, ICE, U.S. Marshals.
O'Connell has said that raids do not make Nashville safer and lead to mistrust between police and the community. Nearly 200 people were detained as part of this month's ICE sweeps. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said roughly half of those detained had some kind of criminal record. O'Connell has asked ICE officials for the names and charges of those detained. He told WPLN News that, quote, by ICE's own admission, a large percentage of people caught up in this sweep had no criminal record, end quote. The journal of the assailant in the Covenant School shooting has been released by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The Tennessean reports the release happened yesterday afternoon when the FBI uploaded the 112-page journal without any explanation. An earlier agency memo had explained how its release could be harmful. In April, Metro Nashville police closed their investigation of the shooting that happened in March of 2023. The attack killed 6 people, 3 9-year-old students, and 3 adult staff members. The tragedy prompted protests calling for new gun restrictions and a special legislative session focused on public safety. The Tennessean and other media outlets sued MNPD to release records, and earlier this month, a Nashville police whistleblower was arrested by the TBI and indicted for mishandling documents related to the shooting. The day after the Antioch High School shooting, Nashville police arrested a 12-year-old for posting a concerning screenshot on Instagram. His school was supposed to figure out if it was a valid threat. A new ProPublica investigation explores how the school expelled him with no further investigation, which experts say could have done more harm than good. Reporter Aaliyah Swaby says it's hard to know how other districts are handling similar cases.
schools in Tennessee are supposed to submit data to the state about how effective their threat assessments are, but the state doesn't release that information to the public or even to the lawmakers who are supposed to be making crucial decisions about threat assessments at the legislature. Without a change, we're going to have to rely on cases like this to show us what's actually happening in schools.
You can read Aaliyah's full investigation at our website, WPLN.org. Meanwhile, a Chattanooga charter school agreed to a settlement of $100,000 after referring a student to police over an alleged threat of mass violence. WPLN's Paige Flager says the family sued Chattanooga Preparatory School in federal court after their 11-year-old autistic son was handcuffed at a family birthday party.
Lawyers argued that the school was at fault for reporting the boy to police as though he had made a valid threat, while knowing he had not. According to the family's lawyer, Justin Gilbert, this is the first known monetary settlement challenging this law.
Monetary figures, for better or for worse, can be a driver for policy change. And sometimes legislatures can react to that, school districts can react to that, to hopefully prevent these kids from being arrested and expelled unnecessarily.
The school also agreed to get training on how to handle threats of mass violence moving forward. The 11-year-old's mother said it's bittersweet. Her son is still afraid of the police, reminded of the night he was transported in the back of a cop car to juvenile detention. But she hopes this will prevent the same thing from happening to other kids. Paige Flager, WPLN News.
Chattanooga Prep did not immediately respond to a request for comment. You can read more on that at our website as well. Memorial Day weekend this year was less deadly than last year. The Tennessee Highway Patrol recorded 8 fatalities over the holiday weekend compared to 14 last year. And the Wildlife Resource Agency says there were no boating-related deaths on waterways. The agency told the Tennessean the weather may have contributed. More than 2 inches of rain fell, which kept boating traffic to a minimum. Middle Tennessee native and word whiz Vidula Calither was eliminated during round 9 of the National Scripps Spelling Bee. She misspelled the word Colomiers, which is a kind of brie cheese. The 13-year-old is a rising 8th grader at Woodland Middle School in Brentwood. She's one of hundreds of kids that traveled to Washington, D.C. this week, competing to be the nation's top speller. Calither was among the final 35 spellers before her elimination. This means she made it to the semifinals. We had mistakenly reported earlier that she moved along to the finals. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. As evangelical Christians continue to support President Donald Trump, church leadership is taking issue with his immigration policies. WPLN's Miriam reports that's creating division between church leadership and their congregations.
The Sunday before the Tennessee legislature voted to pass a sweeping immigration bill, State Senator Brent Taylor walked out of his home church in Memphis. That's because during the pre-service announcement at Trinity Baptist Church, Pastor Matt Crawford had this to say about Trump allowing Immigration and Customs Enforcement to make arrests inside churches.
I hope that we can believe both in the rule of law and feel that we don't want worship services disrupted by that. I hope that me saying that doesn't anger you. But I wanted to address that. Hopefully we can talk about things with unity and nuance and even differences of opinion because it's on the hearts of some of our people.
I did walk out. It was because I didn't show up to church that morning to hear a political speech.
Senator Taylor says immigration is largely a secular issue, but
heaven has an immigration policy and hell does not. You can't climb the wall. You can't dig a hole and come in under the wall. You can't present fake documents to St. Peter at the gate. Hell, on the other hand, you can get there any number of ways, and you don't have to have documentation to get in there.
Taylor has sponsored a slew of bills ramping up immigration enforcement, including one that would hold churches and nonprofits liable if they house someone who goes on to commit a crime.
They believe that helping somebody who is here illegally, that somehow that they're going to get some credits to get into heaven. And I just don't view it that way.
Neither do a lot of evangelical Christians, Taylor says. He cites the number of congregants nationwide who voted for Trump. Research from Lifeway, a publishing arm of the Southern Baptist Convention, paints a more complicated picture of how evangelicals view immigration, says Galen Carey from the National Association of Evangelicals.
The vast majority of evangelical Christians, they support border security, but they also support pathway to citizenship.
Many told pollsters that they see the number of immigrants as a drain on resources, but they also believe the nation has a responsibility to care for refugees and others fleeing hardship. Those beliefs are creating tension between those in the pulpit and those in the pews. Earlier this year, the Presbyterian Church in America gave advice to church members without citizenship on how to interact with ICE, something the PCA later retracted and apologized for following backlash from some of its congregations. But for one PCA church in Nashville, the issue isn't as polarizing. David Gaston hosts a Sunday night Bible study and dinner for the congregation of City Church in East Nashville.
Something that's so very important is just having a place to be able to come together and talk.
The PCA is a conservative Calvinist denomination. But in the more artsy neighborhood of East Nashville, this particular congregation is more of a mixed bag. Tonight, they're sitting around a fire in Gaston's backyard, eating dinner off of paper plates.
Meals like this, people gathering from all different sides of life, all different parts of the political spectrums, and just talking together, bit of an act of resistance in our current climate.
That kind of resistance is why Jeremiah Sunshine drives in from the next county over to attend City Church. As Gaston chops firewood for tonight's bonfire, Sunshine is standing by as the church's resident tree expert.
Nowadays, they call us an arborist. When I started in the industry 25 years ago, we were tree surgeons. Now they call us arborists. So.
Sunshine's tree service employs a number of people, including immigrant workers.
And we need people to come into the country. You know, we need them. Not only are they a wonderful blessing, socially and culturally, but they strengthen the workforce. You know, they do all kinds of wonderful things.
But Sunshine says he also believes in law and order and supports President Trump's approach to immigration. He points to the Old Testament book of Nehemiah, which stresses the importance of walls to protect Jerusalem.
Any country needs a border, an actual border that functions as a border. If you don't have a border, you don't really have a country.
Other members of Sunshine's church, like Alice and Matthew Smith, have a different outlook.
There are specific, Old Testament passages about loving the foreigner and the widow and the orphan among you, leaving the grains of your field unharvested on the edges so that foreigners and people who are traveling, sojourners and the strangers can have food when they are in poverty.
It even says that if someone falls into poverty among the people of God, treat them as you would the foreigner. And that means care for them.
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of conversations are part of the reason Sunshine's family makes the drive out to East Nashville every Sunday. He says churches closer to home were too afraid to talk about these issues.
It concerns me how little discussion there is about it. Like, it grieves me how little discussion there is about it.
But around a bonfire, the Smiths and the Sunshines can talk about these things, even if they, like the rest of the church, never reach a true consensus. Mariana Baca-Yao, WPLN News.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one. And we'll catch back up next week.